Before we continue, I would like to put up a trigger warning that in discussing the world of Berserk and the trauma the characters suffer, we will be discussing nearly every sensitive topic, ranging from violence, gore, physical and sexual abuse, and much more. If you aren't comfortable with any of these topics, or topics that you may find sensitive fall under these categories, I advise against watching this video. This grisly image of a hangman's tree is where we begin the story of our main character Guts. Right from birth, Guts found himself launched into the grim dark world of Berserk when he is born from the body of his hanging mother, surrounded by death in the aftermath of war. However, against all odds, he is alive, and eventually, a mercenary group led by a man named Gambino discovered the child. At first, they were going to leave the child to die, but Shizu, the prostitute of the group, and presumed lover of Gambino, takes in the child as her own ever since she went insane from her miscarriage. The mercenary group believes that the child is cursed, but decide to let Shizu keep Guts as a coping mechanism. 3 years later, however, Shizu comes down with a plague, and all Guts can do is watch as she agonizingly succumbs to her illness and die. From here, Gambino takes up the role of caretaker for Guts, and he is rarely ever good to him. Gambino cares more about training Guts to be a mercenary than actually raising him as a child, teaching him how to fight with a regular-sized sword because they don't have anything made for kids. During a sparring session, Gambino cuts Guts' nose and leaves a scar. However, Guts forgives Gambino and even begins to trust in him as Gambino gives him a healing ointment to tend to his wound. A few nights later, one of the mercenaries named Donovan comes into Guts' tent and tells him that Gambino sold Guts to him for the night. From here, Guts is brutally raped. Not believing what Donovan said, Guts enacts his revenge by tracking down Donovan and killing him the next day. Following this, Guts brings it up to Gambino, who feigns ignorance about ever selling off Guts. Long after, Gambino is severely injured in battle, and later that night, in a drunken stupor, walks into Guts' tent, saying that he is cursed and the reason why Shizu died. Additionally, Gambino also admits to selling Guts off to Donovan. When Gambino tries to attack Guts, Guts accidentally kills him by holding up his sword in self-defense. The shock in Guts' eyes from doing so shows that he really didn't mean to kill Gambino. After all, Gambino was his only parental figure. However, the mercenaries heard the commotion and saw what happened and thought that Guts murdered Gambino, causing Guts to flee on horseback. A chase ensues, and eventually, Guts is injured, forced to fend for himself in the wilderness. In this quiet and vast landscape, Guts' newfound sense of loneliness is only amplified. The only sense of family and community that he once knew had been stripped from him in the most traumatic way possible through the bloodshed of his only father figure betraying him. Eventually, Guts comes across a pack of wolves, and in that moment contemplates giving up and almost does so. Having no one there for him, and now with no direction in life, it seems to Guts that this is the only option. But yet, as he did with Gambino, lifts his sword and kills an incoming wolf for reasons he can't explain. Just as he did at birth, Guts continues to stay alive in a world clouded by death and despair. From this moment on, Guts learns to only live by his sword, and his will to fight is the only thing that he can rely on in this world. The trauma Guts carries from his childhood would influence the way he would live for years to come. Learn to trust no one from what transpired. He lived as a lone mercenary, drifting from battlefield to battlefield. Additionally, he constantly rejected offers from mercenary bands who wanted him to join them due to his prowess on the battlefield despite only being 15. That is, until he captures the attention of a man named Griffith, who despite Guts' ability to take down enemies much larger than him, easily defeats Guts in combat and forces him to join his mercenary group known as the Band of the Hawk. Throughout what would be known as the Golden Age arc, Guts would constantly find himself questioning if he could belong to another mercenary band again, or if he could even find himself belonging to another group of people for that matter. However, Guts would eventually warm up to the Band of the Hawk and become accustomed to this type of environment once again. However, this all comes crashing down when Guts overhears Griffith discussing his dream of ruling his own kingdom, and this makes Guts feel as if he can't belong to another man's dream, as he only knows living and fighting for no other person but himself. I would like to take a second to discuss another member of the Band of the Hawk, Casca. Casca was just a young village child when one day a royal came to her village and attempted to rape her. However, As Casca lost hope and was ready to accept what was to come, Griffith came to her rescue. But he does not kill the royal. Instead, Griffith threw his sword to her and let her decide what she wanted. In this moment, she picks up the sword and puts it up, killing the royal. Mirroring Guts' encounter with the wolves, despite these characters' hopelessness from the trauma they endured, their wills to lift their swords helped them survive another day. When Guts joined the Band of the Hawk, him and Casca were always at each other's throats, but would often have to put aside their differences for not only the benefit of the Hawks, but especially for Griffith. Eventually, the two characters would come to bond, and Casca would admit that she is jealous of Guts for stealing Griffith's attention away from her, because ever since she was saved by Griffith, she had been in love with him and admired his ambition to rule his own kingdom. However, she was depressed that in doing so, in trying to achieve his own kingdom, he would have to gain power by marrying Princess Charlotte. Additionally, in this moment, Casca realizes that she has developed feelings for Guts. Casca's feelings for Guts would only make his departure from the Band of the Hawk even more dramatic. After Griffith refuses to let Guts leave, they have a duel that results in Guts defeating Griffith, utterly crushing him emotionally, and leading to the downfall of the Band of the Hawk. Guts only returns to the Hawks after learning Casca is their new leader, and he's met with hostility and rage as Casca attempts to attack him for leaving, despite knowing how much Griffith respected and valued Guts as a part of his dream. After Guts left, Griffith, completely distraught, forced himself upon Princess Charlotte sexually, and the king, when he found out about this, had Griffith arrested and brutally tortured, reducing him to a shell of the man he once was. In this reunion, Casca attempts to commit suicide by jumping off a cliff, only for Guts to grab and save her. In this moment, the two characters reawaken their feelings for one another in an attempt to make love. However, Guts is reminded of his moment when Donovan had his way with him, and in reaction grabs Casca by the throat, followed by intense hallucinations of both Donovan and Gambino. Not only is this the first time Guts has confronted his trauma in years, but it's also the first time he had opened up to someone and discussed his past in detail in order to explain himself to Casca, which causes him to break down in tears. Guts has a monologue talking about how he meant to confront his past a while ago, and tries to understand why these memories had to re-emerge now of all times. Guts realizes that for his entire life, he has internalized his childhood trauma, and he no longer needs to keep it under lock and key by finding comfort in opening up to the people he loves. And then, Guts and Casca make love. It seems after so many years of suffering and despair, Guts has finally found his purpose in life after wandering alone for so long. He has begun to open up to people. He found love. He found friendship within the Band of the Hawk. For once, life was looking up for him. However, this all comes crashing down after the Hawks rescue Griffith, and he turns against them all by using the Bailet of the King, a key to the ethereal realm that he was fated to use and bring about the eclipse. Griffith summons the supernatural, omnipotent beings known as the God Hand in order to become one of their own, giving up his physical form and resurrecting as Femto. By simply saying the words, "I sacrifice," Griffith takes everything from Guts. Before Guts' very eyes, the Band of the Hawk, his friends, they are all slaughtered and feasted upon by demons just like cattle. In rage, Guts tries killing Femto, even going as far as to mutilate himself in order to try and attack him. However, his efforts prove meaningless as Femto flings him away just like a rag doll and has him pinned down by demons. Forcing Guts to watch him, Femto then rapes and impregnates Casca. This horrific image is the last thing Guts sees as his right eye is stabbed through by the demons holding him down. The eclipse is very much an apocalyptic event, and had it not been for the Skull Knight rescuing Guts and Casca, they would have been slaughtered also. The trauma that these characters suffer from this event are very different. Casca, once one of the strongest and most intelligent fighters within the Hawk, was mentally broken, reduced to the mental equivalent of a toddler and in need of constant care. Guts, however, from having the only good in his life stripped away from him, manifests his trauma in a bloodthirsty rage. A rage so powerful, it eventually manifests into the creature known as the Beast of Darkness, which I will come back to in a brief moment. Additionally, these characters are never given the opportunity to heal, because the brand of sacrifice that they receive during the eclipse attracts demons to them, ensuring that they can never live safely and serve as a constant reminder of the traumatic event they endured. In the Black Swordsman arc, which takes place in the volumes that precede the Golden Age, and the Lost Children's arc that follows the Golden Age, we watch Guts go on his revenge quest. However, we do not see the Guts we knew, but a Guts who has let the rage from his trauma completely blind him, as he embarks on a bloodthirsty revenge quest to not only find Femto, but to kill every single apostle, people who sacrifice their own loved ones to the God Hand in order to become more powerful, just like Griffith. On his mission to kill apostles, Guts becomes just as evil and twisted as the very monsters he fights. This is seen in his newfound fighting tactics, such as when he tortures the Snake King as he is dying to make him suffer the same as humans, or when he uses the daughter of the Count as a shield in order to gain the upper hand. Not only is this seen through the story, but is also shown through much of the artwork. In many of the panels, Guts is shown to be a shadowy figure, or completely disfigured in bouts of his rage, making him look more akin to the demons he fights than an actual human being, which is why he's dubbed the Black Swordsman. Only after when he returns to where Casca is being held and watched by Rickard, a member of the Hawk who wasn't present during the eclipse, to have his sword repaired, does Guts begin to come to the reality of his situation. The blacksmith Godo, who made Guts' immense Dragon Slayer sword, confronts Guts about the way he has decided about dealing with his trauma. You abandoned those irreplaceable things. You went alone. On that day 2 years ago, in your hopeless suffering, you left the last irreplaceable thing you had, and you went by yourself. You were right beside those irreplaceable things, yet you couldn't bear to immerse yourself together in sorrow with them. So instead, you ran away on your own so your malice could burn inside you. Am I wrong? Do you have any place criticizing Rickard, who you left here? Do you have any place talking about revenge for your friends, when you're the one who went off, abandoning that girl here? At the critical moment, you go and choose yourself and rely on fighting. You're like a sword drawn to a battlefield, one with countless nicks, soaked in blood, and rusting with a lethal crack in it. A sword that's begun to break. This is my favorite monologue within Berserk. It demonstrates how trauma often blinds us, causing us to act in the here and now, and all Guts knew throughout his life was fighting, and defaulted to that for how to confront his trauma, not realizing that the remnants of the good he lost were still there for him. Guts' revenge quest was a means of avoiding confrontation with his trauma, and by looking to inflict the same amount of suffering he endured onto others, he has only made his trauma worse. He realizes that the fire that burns inside him is not just a rage at the world, but also yearning to return to the world that once was. In this monologue, we see for the first time the embodiment of Guts' soul and his PTSD, the Beast of Darkness. From here on throughout the story, the Beast of Darkness is something that Guts has to combat constantly. It urges him to return to the rage and bloodshed that he becomes so accustomed to, rather than continuing on and protecting Casca. Throughout his new journey, he's constantly at odds with the Beast, attempting to tame it and control it. And often, he succumbs to the Beast of Darkness if it means protecting Casca and the new group of allies he's made. This is especially clear when Guts dons the Berserk armor, a magic armor set that allows the user to block off all feeling and let their spirit take over the fight. The armor will pin together broken bones and make the user continue fighting until they've lost every last drop of blood from their body. While letting the Berserker armor take over has helped Guts win battles, succumbing to his rage and letting the armor take over puts immense strain on his body and deteriorates it. And if used too many times, it will let the armor take over the user, effectively letting the Beast of Darkness and the bloodshed that follows it take over Guts, the very thing he is trying to avoid. However, the people in Guts' new traveling group, dubbed the RPG Band by fans, help keep the Beast of Darkness at bay, as well as harnessing its power.